Hey everybody, welcome back to our channel. Today is the first in a series of 5 videos that I'm going to put out on our channel this month, going around Charlotte, North Carolina and exploring some of the really interesting and historical cemeteries around town. In today's video, I am in the Old Settlers Cemetery, which is uptown Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a very old cemetery and I can't wait to tell you all about it. The Old Settlers Cemetery was designated as the first municipal burial ground in the city of Charlotte and contains the graves of over 300 of the earliest settlers of this town. The first interments began in 1776, 12 years before the city of Charlotte was established. The cemetery was laid out next to the town's earliest non-denominational church, which is today the First Presbyterian Church, and it received interments for over 100 years before reaching maximum capacity. Many of the original founding members of the city of Charlotte are buried here in large plots with their families. Old Settlers Cemetery was Charlotte's only city-operated cemetery until 1854, when space was becoming limited and it officially closed. The last interment in Old Settlers was in 1884. The city of Charlotte purchased over 70 acres of green space just west of town and opened the Elmwood-Pinewood Cemetery to accommodate the growing influx of people coming to live in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. By the 1940s, the Old Settlers Cemetery was in extremely poor condition and was only preserved through advocacy of Charlotte historians. In the 1990s, Old Settlers received a $500,000 grant for restoration, and the first phase of restoration was begun in 1998. All marked graves were plotted, bronze markers were erected to show grave sites and decedent names, unmarked graves were attempted to be plotted, and monuments that had been damaged or vandalized were placed into storage to be photographed and cataloged. Major landscaping efforts were also begun. Round 2 of preservation is an ongoing process that was begun in 2024. The monuments in storage are still being repaired and reset, and existing monuments on site are also being repaired. Measures are being taken to protect the monuments that are in good condition also. The historic Elmwood-Pinewood Committee was formed to continue the preservation efforts, and community outreach programs have been initiated this year to try to encourage volunteering in the restoration projects and donations from people who would like to assist. I've linked the official Elmwood-Pinewood website below, and there is a link on the main page if you would like to donate to this project. The goal is to continue to honor the forebears of Charlotte and to ensure the enjoyment of this sacred place for generations to come. Today, with these majestic old oaks and brick-lined pathways, the Old Settlers Cemetery is more of a park than a cemetery, and it is a centerpiece of Charlotte's 4th Ward Historic District. Today, we are going to talk briefly about 6 families that are buried here in the Old Settlers Cemetery and their significance to the history of Charlotte's development. And I'm going to be honest, even with a map and a diagram, some of the actual grave sites were very hard to find. If I've misled anyone in this video as to where anyone specifically is buried, I do apologize. I'm mostly just trying to show the family burial plots and how beautiful this cemetery is while telling a brief history of some of our most famous founding families. The first family we will talk about is the Polk family. In 1755, a surveyor named Thomas Polk built his home where 2 Indian trading paths met. Many years later, this crossroads would become known as the Square, or the intersection of Charlotte's busy Trade and Tryon streets. Thomas Polk married Susanna Spratt, whose family had been one of the first families to make their way through the wilderness and settle what was then known as Charlotte Town. Thomas Polk, along with 2 other men, purchased 360 acres from Britain's Lord Augustus Selwyn, and the city of Charlotte began to flourish. By the 1770s, conflicts were growing between the colonial settlers and the British rulers who wanted to maintain control over the colonies. Thomas Polk became commander of the local militia and was one of the 27 men who signed the controversial documents in 1775 that pronounced the county's freedom from British rule. He went on to serve as a general in the Revolutionary War. The Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence and the Mecklenburg Resolves documents would remain the source of controversy for many years. In 1791, President George Washington visited Charlotte and came to dine at the home of Thomas Polk. Thomas Polk is the great-uncle of James K. Polk, who served as President of the United States from 1845 to 1849. This is the plot of the Graham family. Major General George Graham was born in Pennsylvania in 1758, but came to Charlotte, North Carolina when he was about 6 years old. He was educated at the Queen's Museum in Charlotte and was distinguished for his close attention to detail, manly behavior, and kind disposition. He was devoted to the cause of liberty and was an untiring defender, ready to undertake any duty, no matter how perilous, for the welfare and independence of his country. In 1775, two Tory lawyers named Dunn and Booth had condemned all patriotic beliefs and resolutions as acts of treason. General George Graham was one of the gallant spirits who rode all night to Salisbury, North Carolina, to seize the offending lawyers and bring them to Charlotte to stand trial. They were found guilty of conduct inimical to the cause of American freedom and were transported to South Carolina for imprisonment. Graham served throughout the Revolutionary War as Major General of the North Carolina Militia and was among the Mecklenburg Patriots, who were some of the war's most hostile forces. In 1780, he was among the 12 or 14 Patriots who fought back a force of 400 British soldiers at McIntyre's Farm, compelling the British troops to retreat for 7 miles along Beatty's Ford Road with a considerable loss of their men. This incident later became known as the Battle of the Hornets. Charlotte then adopted the nickname the Hornet's Nest, a name that it still uses to this day. Our police force carries the insignia of a hornet's nest on their badges and their vehicles. After the war, Major General Thomas Graham served as clerk of the court of Mecklenburg County for many years and was frequently a member of the state legislature. He was the people's friend, not their flatterer, and uniformly enjoyed the confidence and high esteem of his fellow citizens. He lived on his farm 2 miles outside of downtown Charlotte for over 50 years and died at the age of 68. I was really expecting to find a link here between this family and the Billy Graham family, but if there is a relation, I didn't find it. Major John Davidson was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1735 and moved with his family to North Carolina in the early 1750s, settling down on the Yadkin River near Salisbury. His widowed mother remarried a school teacher who educated John and his sister Mary. John Davidson became a blacksmith and moved into Mecklenburg County in 1759. The following year, he married the daughter of one of Mecklenburg's wealthiest landowners named Violet Wilson. John obtained a grant in 1767 for land on the Catawba River, where he built a log cabin that he called Rural Retreat. In 1788, he built Rural Hall, a red brick mansion that was described as the finest country residence in this section of the state. Sadly, the mansion was destroyed by a fire 98 years later in 1886. During the colonial period, John Davidson served as a Justice of the Peace and as a member of the North Carolina House of Commons for Mecklenburg County. He and Thomas Polk were instrumental in the passage of a bill making Charlotte the permanent county seat of Mecklenburg. With the takeover of the colonial government in 1775, John was elected to the Committee of Safety for Mecklenburg County. He was a signer of the legendary Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence and also served as a major in the local militia during the Revolutionary War. He played a key role in developing the iron industry when he and 2 of his sons-in-law established the state's first iron mine. They operated a large forge that supplied American forces with cannonballs during the War of 1812. John and Violet had 10 children. The Davidsons are remembered today as one of the founding families who helped shape the social, economic, and educational foundations of Charlotte and the surrounding areas. One of the most lasting contributions of the family is Davidson College, which is slightly north of Charlotte in a town also called Davidson. The college was founded in 1837 and was named after Major John Davidson's son William Lee, who died during the Revolutionary War at the Battle of Cowan's Ford. Another name that you hear all over Charlotte is the name Caldwell. James Caldwell and his two brothers, Billy and Thomas, and their families came to North Carolina from Virginia sometime in the latter part of the 1700s by pack horses and pitched camps. James Caldwell received a grant of 100 acres of land in 1795, and all three brothers built homes on his property. The two brothers eventually moved away, but James remained on the land as long as he lived. The Caldwell family has been closely linked with the Davidsons and with Rosedale, a 19th century Federal-style plantation house located in Charlotte since the early 1800s. The Presbyterian Church in Mecklenburg County was established by Reverend Alexander Caldwell. His cousin was Dr. David Caldwell, who was a renowned Presbyterian minister, educator, and practicing physician. Wilkinson is another name you will see all over Charlotte, most notably on Wilkinson Boulevard, which is one of the main roads around City Center that Michael and I take frequently. Wilkinson Boulevard connects Charlotte to the neighboring Gaston County, which is becoming more and more popular as people move into this area by the droves. The Wilkinsons arrived in this area sometime during the late 18th or early 19th century, and they acquired land in and around Charlotte. They became involved in agriculture, which was the primary industry in Charlotte at that time. They are perhaps not as well known as some of the other founding families in Charlotte today, but they were politically prominent and well regarded for their commitment to the development of Charlotte as a growing town. There is a Neil Wilkinson buried here, who was listed in the 1860 census as a Daguerrean artist, which was an early type of photography, and he was also the proprietor of a large boarding house. He enlisted in the Confederate Army and was killed at the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. He had 2 children, and his name has continued on long after his family story has been seemingly lost. Another name that you'll see prominently all over Charlotte is the name Irwin. The Irwin family can trace their genealogical lineage over 30 generations, as far back as Alpin, the father of King Kenneth MacAlpine, the first king of Scotland in the early 9th century. MacAlpine is another name you'll see around town, and I'm assuming that there's a connection here with the Irwins honoring their heritage. The Irwin family played a significant role during the Revolutionary War. Colonel Robert Irwin served in the Mecklenburg County Militia and participated in the Battle of Kings Mountain, which was a pivotal American victory in the South. The Irwin family acquired large tracts of land and became influential landowners and civic leaders. They were strongly involved with developing Charlotte and the surrounding areas, becoming engaged in education, politics, and local governance. One of the most prominent members of the Irwin family was Bat Irwin, who lived in Charlotte from 1809 to 1854. Bat was a leading member of the Charlotte community and generously supported his church, the Sugar Creek Presbyterian Church. Bat's son, John Robinson Irwin, is probably the most thoroughly documented member of this family, and like many of his ancestors, he also rose to prominence. He graduated from Davidson College in 1875 and the University of Maryland Medical School in 1877. He practiced medicine for many years, specializing in gynecology and abdominal surgery, and he taught at a number of medical institutions. He and his wife had several children, and many of their descendants still reside in Charlotte. Today, when I think of the name Irwin, I think of a little river that runs through town called Irwin Creek, and it also has a greenway that follows it. Michael and I get out on a lot of mornings on the weekends. He takes a run, and I walk our dog along the greenway. It's a beautiful path, and I've showed it on this channel before. All right, everybody, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed making it for you, and we've got 4 more to come once a week for the rest of the month. See you guys another day in another adventure. Bye, everybody.